Dam dream materialized, and in June 1955, a group of 4 corporations under the name of Tri-Dam Constructors began work on the Donnells phase of the project. The first job was getting into the canyon. It meant much preliminary work to provide access to the site, which lay more than 1,800 feet below the existing highway. To build the access road to the dam site, pneumatic drills were used to cut the hard rock and prepare for blasting. Thousands of holes were filled with dynamite. Explosions ripped the hillside. Caterpillars soon followed to push their tedious way along the steep mountain and excavate the roadway. They were followed by shovels and other equipment which cut the roadway to full width. The site itself lay in a deep, narrow gorge, and the first work in the canyon was done by men and equipment which was lowered by cableway. Material was brought to the loading area at the edge of the canyon and fastened to the carriage on the cableway. The cableway was operated by a small 2-drum hoist powered by a gasoline engine. Slowly, the material was sent to the men in the canyon. The larger boulders had to be broken up by blasting before they could be removed from the riverbed. Meanwhile, 8 miles below the dam site, the contractor was building his camp. Large warehouses, offices, and other buildings, including 6 bunkhouses which accommodated 32 men each, were being erected. Much material and manpower went into the preparation stage before work could begin on building the dam. Temporary power facilities were installed until the Pacific Gas and Electric Company could deliver electricity to the site. There was much to be done before drillers could begin working in the canyon. Vast amounts of material were removed from the canyon walls by blasting and by scalers who removed the loose rock. In 4 months, the road had been built to the riverbed, and trucks were able to bring equipment to the site. A diversion tunnel was the first order of work, as the river had to be channeled away from its customary bed before the loose material at the site of the dam could be removed. It was November by the time the trucks and shovels were assembled and ready to commence work. They began while the river was still flowing in its channel. Here, men are breaking up the large boulders with air drills so the shovel can handle them. This material was used to provide building sites as required by the contractor. By December 1955, the 1,200-foot diversion tunnel was carrying the river. Pumps were installed in the riverbed, and work was begun on removal of debris accumulated during thousands of years. At the same time, the overburden was being removed from the spillway site more than 300 feet above the riverbed. Work was also going forward on construction of the concrete mixing plant. The sand screening plant was being erected along with the aggregate storage bins. Meanwhile, facilities were constructed at sites along the contractor's 8-mile access road to permit simultaneous driving of the power tunnel from 3 headings. The Lily Creek adit was driven nearly 1,000 feet into the mountain to contact the main tunnel line. When finished, this will be a 12.5-foot diameter tunnel, 7 2/10 miles long, to carry water from the dam to the power plant. Driving of the tunnel was also started at the downstream portal, where the control valves would later be installed at the top of the penstock. Far below, equipment was clearing away overburden at the power plant site, and the penstock trench was being excavated. A stiff-leg derrick was erected to place the concrete and unload the power plant equipment. By April 1956, the excavation at the dam site was 50 feet deep. Irrigation district directors and others visited the site frequently to observe progress. John Vreeling and Edwin Coster, chairman of the 2 boards, were among the interested visitors. A wooden bulkhead was erected to prevent material from falling into the excavation, which, by June, 1 year after original groundbreaking, had reached 167 feet below stream bed. Logs were used for the cribbing at this depth. They were brought to the site by truck and moved into the excavation by mobile crane. Each log was cut to precise length and angle by crews above. Then carefully lowered into the excavation. Water seepage was one of the problems at this point. Each log was attached to a cable anchored in the rock of the canyon. A drag line was the only means of bringing out the excavated material from this depth. There was little room for equipment, so the work was slow. The material was carried by truck to a dump area downstream from the site. As the excavation proceeded, the canyon narrowed until it was less than 30 feet in width. There was little room for the pumps, tractor, other equipment, and men. On July 9, 1956, just 13 months after beginning of the project, the first bucket of concrete was poured in the canyon bottom. This ceremony was attended by officials of the irrigation districts and contractors and took place nearly 200 feet below the riverbed. At this point, the rock walls of the canyon met. This was the first of more than 32,000 buckets, each holding 6 cubic yards of concrete, which went into the building of the dam. At the same time, work had progressed at the power plant site, 7 miles downstream. The pit liner was in place, and the first sections of penstock were installed. Much reinforcing steel was included in the concrete foundation of the power plant building. The work of placing concrete in the plug section of the dam was on a 24-hour-per-day schedule. Forms were built at one end while concrete was being placed at the other, the plug being 81 feet thick at this point. At the spillway site, high above, the first forms were being erected for the piers and apron. It was necessary to clear the reservoir area of all timber before water could be stored. This operation was begun in midsummer of 1956. The forest was heavy with timber on both sides of the river. The canyon echoed to the fall of trees and the chug of tractors which stacked material for burning. Over 425 acres were cleared in Donnells Reservoir site. Usable timber was stacked in strategic spots and brought by tractor to the upstream portal of the diversion tunnel. It was floated through this tunnel to a pool at the lower end, from which it was removed and carried by truck to sawmills. During the summer of 1956, the plug in the bottom of the canyon grew rapidly. Cement and other material came by railroad to Jamestown. The cars were spotted on a siding there and emptied at the rate of 4 cars a day into a large storage hopper. From this hopper, cement was transferred into trucks. These large trucks and trailers carried it 55 miles to Donnells Dam site. 4 trucks, each making 3 round trips daily, kept the contractor supplied. Rock for the concrete was quarried on the mountainside close to the dam. It was carried by truck a few hundred yards to the crusher. Here it was broken by a primary crusher and stockpiled. It was then carried by conveyor belt to the aggregate plant. Here it was carefully washed and screened according to various sizes. Finally, it was transported to storage bins. In mixing the concrete, this material was mechanically selected in correct quantities from the bins and mixed with the proper amount of water and cement according to a predetermined formula. The empty buckets were carried by train on a shuttle railroad from the dam site to the concrete plant, where they were refilled. The buckets were unloaded from the train by the cableway and carried out over the canyon to the dam site. One end of the cable was attached to a movable tower, which permitted placement of the bucket wherever it was desired. During August, the dam had risen nearly to the old river level. This part, called the plug, would become the foundation on which the arch section of the dam would be built. The penstock sections were stored in various convenient places. These sections were 40 feet long and 81 inches in diameter, with the steel plate as much as 1 3/4 inches thick. They were carried to the penstock site by tractor and trailer as needed. Here, a tramway and hoist were used to place the sections. Each penstock connection was carefully inspected to be sure it was at the proper grade and alignment. The power plant substructure of reinforced concrete was completed by the time most of the penstock was in place. Meanwhile, the plug section of the dam was finished on August 17th, and work began on cutting the keyway into the canyon sides. Material was dropped to the bed of the river and moved by shovel into the spaces on each side of the plug. Cy Piedmont was the project manager for tri-dam constructors at Donnells Dam. While work in the canyon was going forward at a rapid pace, the spillway crest and piers were beginning to rise. Men worked precariously on the narrow ledges. In October of 1956, installation began on the first of 5 gates, each of which is 19 by 35 feet in size. On October 15th, the first concrete was poured in the arch section of the dam. This is directly on top of the plug, which reaches down nearly 200 feet to bedrock. Meanwhile, structural steel was brought to the power plant site by truck and unloaded with the stiff-leg derrick. It was inventoried and stockpiled in a storage area, preparatory to erection on the concrete substructure. The turbine pit liner was in place in the building. By November, the steel framework was nearly complete, and the 2,500-foot penstock all in place. By Christmas 1956, the arched section of the dam had risen 50 feet above the riverbed. As many as 950 men and 195 pieces of equipment were at work simultaneously on all phases of the Donnells project. Work was begun on the trash rack structure and tunnel intake, through which water will pass en route to the power plant. At the same time, installation was being completed on the third spillway gate. A month later, the arched dam had risen 100 feet above the stream bed. Although the canyon at this point is only 4,600 feet above sea level, the winters are very cold. The sun never shone in the bottom and ice accumulated to great thickness. The men warmed themselves with fires. Steam was provided both at the mixing plant and on the dam to prevent freezing of concrete. While the dam has risen half its final height, a look at the keyway in the right wall shows how much work still remains. By the middle of February 1957, the power plant building was virtually finished and installation of equipment begun. A single generator here will produce 54,000 kilowatts of electricity at rated capacity. The dam had risen 150 feet by the 1st of March. Bypass outlets were provided in the face of the dam for release of water to the river immediately below. It was now possible to begin storing water. A large steel gate was erected at the upstream portal of the diversion tunnel to cut off the river flow. All equipment in the reservoir area was removed by the cableway. Early in April, water rose rapidly behind Donnells Dam and soon covered the tunnel intake structure. The spillway gates were receiving their final coat of paint, while construction of the thrust block, which will tie the dam and spillway together, went forward. Final welding on the 5th spillway gate completed this job. With the arrival of spring, parts of the dam had reached their final height 317 feet above stream bed, and railing was installed on the narrow 10-foot crest. The bridge across the spillway was nearing completion. The structure took on all appearances of a dam, even to the passage of water through the bypass outlets. Downriver, at the point where the tunnel joins the penstock, work was proceeding on construction of the butterfly valve housing in preparation for placing the final section of penstock. The switch yard was nearly finished at the powerhouse. Material was being placed in the parking area. Erection of the generator was nearly complete. On June 7, 1957, the lake had risen to within a few feet of the spillway gates. The spillway was nearly finished. Irrigation district directors and other officials assembled to witness the last pour of concrete in this spectacular thin arch dam. And the usual picture-taking ceremonies. Two years from the time work first began on cutting the road to Donnells' site, the dam was finished and the 3-mile lake filled. The reservoir can store 64,500 acre-feet of water to provide irrigation for the thirsty valley below. This monumental project appears tiny in its vast natural setting of rugged mountain beauty, but its value looms large in the lives and the economy of those who will reap its benefit. The Creator is lavish in his abundance and has given man ingenuity to make it possible for him to develop and enjoy these natural blessings.